Hey guys, so it's me, Kiani. Today's video is going to be a follow-up video on a video that I posted a few weeks ago. Basically telling you guys or updating you all on what me and my family have been going through, which is a miscarriage. I put that video out, and to my surprise, the response was somewhat overwhelming. But I did promise you guys in that video, if you wanted to have more information on how I was doing and how I was working through grief, my family's working through grief, that I would come back and do a follow-up video. So here it is. I will say, if you have not viewed that video, definitely go ahead and see that, so you can kind of have a little bit more context on how I've actually gotten to this point. And it will just give you a little bit more background, but that doesn't say that you really even need that video to start at this point, because I'm really just going to be explaining the things that I've gone through to get to this point, which is how I'm actually able to move past the grief. I'm not saying that I'm not still grieving. I'm not saying that grief won't strike me at a later date. I'm not saying that I don't still have the crippling effects of grief, but I'm saying with all of that, how I'm actually able to function and move past it and know that I do still have a life outside of grief, if that makes any sense. So I've gone ahead and taken the liberty just to kind of jot down things, because the times that I couldn't turn on my camera, I was definitely looking for nods from myself, my old self, to say you are headed in the right direction, and to look for a glimmer of hope that the suffocating feeling that grief does allow and that grief does bring. I wanted to have some type of simulation of what my life previous was, so I wanted to move in that direction to get me closer to a new norm, somewhere like what I had experienced before grief. So with that being said, the first thing that I definitely want to put at the top of my list is prayer. As I stated before, I am a faith-based person. My faith has been alive and well since as far as I can remember. And we're talking way past, going to a physical church. We're talking way past, dressing up. We're talking way past hearing a sermon every day or every week. We're talking about what lies in my heart. And once grief struck, I remember there was one poignant day after we found out that there was no heartbeat. That week was so tough. And I have to give you guys a little bit more context. On that week, we had, or prior to that, we had already shared that we were pregnant with our kids. My two babies. Our two babies. My 14-year-old daughter, my 13-year-old son. No, my 14-year-old daughter and my 11-year-old son. He acts like he's 13. We had already shared the information that we were pregnant. Prior to that, my son was honestly the first person that brought it to me that I was gaining weight. And although I was working out, he thought that I looked pregnant. Of course, we're talking about an 11-year-old that acts like he's 13 and much, much further along than that with his cognitiveness. And it had not even really dawned on me that it was possible I could be pregnant, because I've actually entered the phase that I have fibroids. We talked to my doctor about it. We were planning to have fibroids removed. We talked about how I bloat really, really bad. And, without being, any more aggressively obvious, I'm moving into the stage of premenopause. And so in my mind, the roundness of my stomach wasn't from pregnancy, it was from fibroids. So with all that being said, my son and my daughter, once after my husband and I had a pregnancy test that was confirming that we were pregnant, because at-home pregnancy test, I mean, the chance that it's going to fail, in my experience, if the pregnancy test at home says you're pregnant, you're pregnant. So anyway, fast forward, we told the kids. They were ecstatic. And honestly, the response from my kids is what made it okay for me to be pregnant with my husband and I, because again, we were not planning to have any more kids. So we took their joy and capitalized on that. We now had a big family function that was going to come up that I wanted the focus to be on the family, not necessarily on me being pregnant and everyone finding out that I was pregnant then. So we made a decision to tell my parents and my in-laws and godparents and my sisters. So the excitement continued to grow. So back to prayer. I have all of the excitement going into having my first sonogram, and the kids are there. We're recording it because, again, we are going to announce this amazing miracle with my social media family. And the devastation that the silence of a sonogram brought, with me, my husband, and our kids in the room, was just deafening. I experienced that exact same silence the day after we had the horrifying news. And I just remember being at home alone and wanting to scream out, but I remember saying the only thing that's going to take this type of pain away is prayer. So I say this because I remember praying for God to take the sting from the anguish and the grief away. It was of nothing else I had ever experienced before. And I knew from that moment that the silence that I usually love in my house was so loud, because it slammed me back to the moment that we realized that where we thought we were going to be welcome in life, we weren't. So the prayer in my mind began to ease my mind, to pull me out of it and say, you need to remove yourself from this silence. So a couple hours passed after that, and not even knowing that a couple hours passed, it was like 9:30, and then I remember it being almost 12 o'clock. And I said, okay, you need to call your husband and see if he could meet you. And that day, he answered the phone on the first ring, which is usually very, very hard for him to answer the phone the first ring. We typically go back into a text or something like that. But this day, he answered the phone, and he was open for lunch. He said, I'll meet you anytime. And I don't even know what I wore that day. I don't even know if I had showered. I don't even know what was going on. But I immediately grabbed my phone. I grabbed my keys. And I was able to drive myself to his office. So I'm going to say, when you're in a fog, prayer is the thing that allows you to get clarity, because you're drawing on a strength much larger than you. I remember that experience. I'm hoping that experience has helped someone. I know that prayer and constant prayer for God to show me, give me the right answer on how we want to proceed toward the miscarriage, how I wanted to explain what was going on to my kids at the time of that sadness, to be able to have my husband available to just hold me on days and not say anything, to have friends and family around to give me their insight on how to move past. I mean, that type of prayer and that circle has gotten me to this point. Next, finding the blessing in the tragedy. This has been really, really big for me, and whereas I think it's possibly even out of order for some people, because again, grief happens different for everyone, and how we deal with it is different. So again, I'm giving my testimony on it. I talked to a very, very good girlfriend, and she reminded me to find the blessing, or to look for the blessing in the tragedy. And I think at the time that I was praying for God to give me the words to explain what was happening to my kids, when I had already explained what they were going to expect and what we were going to hear, and for it to end up not being anything like that, for me to have the words to explain to them what was going on, even when I really didn't understand what was going on, I found the blessing in the chemical pregnancy for us happening very early. I found the blessing in not having the embryo have taken, and it was not embedded in the sac. So for me, the shallowness of not having a baby to miscarry, it was miscarrying the thought of a baby more so, was me finding peace in the tragedy. Me finding peace in the tragedy was knowing that my husband and I, had experienced two amazing births, uneventful births. All of my, medical results were fine. We carried the babies both to full term. I had a vaginal childbirth with both of them. I was fine. For me to have experienced the beauty in childbirth and childbearing twice before, I found the beauty in the tragedy. And there's so many other ways that I think that I have been able to allow myself to say that I'm okay with this situation happening. I think having an amazing career to get back to, having two amazing kids that I want to be present for, having an amazing husband that I want to be present for, having a life that I want to be present in. I want to participate in my life. I don't want to be an observer in my life. Like, having all of these things is me finding the blessing in the tragedy. So for those of you that are watching, finding the blessing in the tragedy is me telling you to gravitate toward the thing that you are the most happy and the most content over. Not to say that you are not allowed to grieve, but I'm saying this is the light. Find that thing and hold on to it with everything that you have until you can find your way back to it. That is finding the blessing in the tragedy. Next thing, I love being extremely busy. Before this experience, me being busy was me being at my best self. It was me putting out good energy and it coming back to me. Staying very, very busy. I will say that all of the seeds that I planted years past for me to get to this point in my career started to easily come visible during this time. I had some shows that I had to do. So if you don't follow my makeup journey and my career, I had two shows that came up back to back that in my heart of hearts I really didn't want to go, but they were booked. And the person that I was before grief hit, I would never cancel on a client or an event. Like, that's not the person I am. My responsibility to my career is equally as passionate as it is about my family and friends. I don't think that it is a good faith effort to cancel on a company when they booked you, regardless of what the situation is. You go and you try to be your best self. Like, that is what I preach, and that's what I did. And those situations came at a very, very vital time, because I was surrounded by people that only wanted me to be me. And that staying busy was the distraction I needed, so I wasn't sitting in the house and watching the walls do nothing. So staying busy, as hard as it is, and some days staying busy for me was just putting one foot in front of the other and taking a shower. I mean, it was a major accomplishment from the day past. It was, you know, me being able to turn my computer on and turn it off. Like, that was, again, that was another nod in the right direction that I was going to get back there. There was, you know, me, you know, going to have lunch with my husband. I got out the house that day. There was me having to go and, as shallow as this may sound, find clothes to wear that wouldn't state that I was pregnant, that it would almost be a camouflage, so I wasn't having to physically deal with my growing belly, although my body was saying your belly is going to stop growing any second. Staying busy. I stayed busy. So no matter how shallow, no matter how busy, staying busy was the thing that allowed me to get back to the light. Next, I'm going to state this. I really had to allow myself time to process what was going on. Although everything that swirled around this event didn't make sense right away, I allowed myself time to process what was going on, which for me was me being vocal. Me talking to my friends, talking to my family, talking to my husband, talking to God, talking to myself, just allowing myself time to stay still, to feel what I felt, and to put a thought to what I was feeling, to make sense out of it, which is basically, I think, how these videos are coming out, to put a thought to my feelings and allow myself time to process. Although I had events that were lined up back to back, I put in backup methods. I took my family, my kids, my husband and my kids along with me for the first show that I had to go on. So I could decompress what I was feeling that day, physically, mentally. I also, when the next trip, I told a very, very good friend what was going on, and he was able to be that wall. He protected me when I was on my trip. He made sure that I was fed. He made sure that that I was okay, and that if I wasn't okay, that I was still okay, if you know what I'm saying. So allowing myself time to process what's going on, and yeah, just knowing that I'm human. I wear many hats and many faces, and I was okay with not doing any of that, but I was okay with doing that if I could make myself. So allowing myself time to process. I had to learn more to be patient, because I wanted this anguish to be gone before it even started. But that's not physically or mentally possible. So I'm learning to be patient and to know not to over push myself. And it's a very, very fine line with over pushing yourself to try to get back to a previous norm. I think that it's not safe to necessarily do that, because you end up not giving yourself time to honestly get back to being yourself. Like, it ends up being a mirror of yourself, or an observation of yourself, a shallow part of yourself, I think being patient is the thing that most people don't have time for, but it's one of the most valuable portions. So learning to take a nap if you need to take a nap, watch a television show that allows your brain to do nothing was great for me. I was as shallow as I turned on a series on Netflix that I've never watched, and there were 5 seasons and 23 episodes per season, and up to this point I'm at season 5, episode 2. I still allow myself time to be patient and do nothing, absolutely nothing, and I'm okay with that. Last thing I have is repeat steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 as many times as you need to. As many times as you need to. Repeat, repeat, repeat. So those are the steps that I've written down on how I am to this point. How I'm able to move through this type of grief. Everybody's grief is different. Everybody's steps are different. Every part of us is different. But at the same time, we're all the same because we're all human. So if this video has helped you, if you think this video is going to help someone else, please share it. In the previous video, I had so many people that reached out to share their stories with grief and tragedy that there's a whole nother series on how we honestly could suffer in silence and eat a little bit of ourselves away every second. I did hear some almost irritating comments, not necessarily in the messages, but just like via phones, that people were saying, "Oh my God, you're so strong." No, I don't feel like I'm strong. I feel like at the time that I needed clarity on what I was going through, there wasn't any. I feel like at the time that I wanted to be able to search for information on what I was experiencing, there wasn't enough. So I want to do my part and say that this is what happened to me. If you experience this, let's talk about it, because you don't even know who you could be helping. And I know that I was really, really searching for someone that had a similar experience to mine, and there was nothing there. And not that anyone wants to have someone else go through what they're going through, but there would have been more comfort and clarity on what I had just been told. I've been asked several times, have we gone through counseling? No, I have not gone through any counseling. Not to say that I won't, but it's crazy to me that if someone were going to have an abortion, there's counseling. If someone is going through IVF, usually there's mandatory counseling. There's mandatory counseling in both of these situations. But when your choice of giving life is being taken away from you, where were the counselors? There weren't any counselors at my doctor's office. My doctor, as great as she was with explaining, she didn't offer me the advice of counseling. She didn't give me a counselor's card. She didn't suggest counseling. So you're in this fog and this emotional roller coaster of going from wanting to hear the heartbeat from a sonogram to have a deafening silence. Where was the counselor? So I'm saying, if you're going through this process of miscarriage, there's nothing to be ashamed of. I didn't put myself in this situation on purpose. I didn't become pregnant and then go and do something that would have caused me to miscarry. I loved this baby from the moment I found out that I was pregnant. So I think there are a lot of myths around people talking about what humanly happens often. But it's not until you're in the situation that people want to use the comfort of, oh, this happens more times than not. Well, where's the information on it? Where's the information on it? So, I've said my piece. I'm hoping this video, again, helps someone. If you need to refer back to my previous video, please do that. I'll leave it linked in the bottom bar. Your comments are always welcome. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for all the love and support that we did receive on the last video. And from my DMs, your emails, your Facebook messages. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. I'm going to get back to my happy place. I have tons of products that are looking at me right now that have been shipped in or that I've had planned before this, but it feels weird for me to create the illusion of beauty when in my heart there's something more pressing to discuss first. So I'm going to just ask for you guys' patience. I'm going to take the time to get back to the external beauty after I get my heart back to where it feels beautiful again, if you understand. So thanks for your patience. Big hugs and kisses. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.